Before this video begins, I want to ask you to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Things like this help my channel grow, and if you like the content here, make sure to let me know by doing all of the above. So if you're like me, a younger millennial, you may have never heard of the Mamas and the Papas. But while wasting my time on TikTok last week, I came across this video. And this video was about the song California Dreaming by the aforementioned Mamas and Papas. I unfortunately did not think to save or favorite this video, so I don't have the original video to show y'all, but there are plenty of these types of videos that exist on TikTok if you want to see more about it. I'd never heard about this song or even who the Mamas and the Papas all were, but y'all, I was intrigued. The gist of the video basically was, just remember that while the Mamas and the Papas were singing about California Dreaming, this man, John Phillips, looked at his daughter and said, "Yes, this is the woman I want to be with." In other words, John Phillips had a romantic and sexual relationship with his own daughter for a period of about 10 years, which only ended because of Mackenzie Phillips. So this started a rabbit hole for me. I started thinking about this whole messed up situation and decided that, hey, now this makes an interesting video idea. So I hope it goes without saying, but it will be said that the content in this video is not suitable for all viewers. There will be mentions of drug and alcohol use, sexual assault, incest, and death. Let us remember that while some of the people that are mentioned in this video are public figures, they are not to be harassed by the allegations in this video. This works as a way to talk about some of the dark music history in this country that some of the people in the spotlight have gone through, and not as a justification for harassment. Now, without further ado, let us begin. Who are the Mamas and the Papas, you may ask yourself? Well, the Mamas and the Papas are a pop group formed by John and Michelle Phillips, Denny Duarte, and Cass Elliott. John Phillips used to be a member of a folk group named the New Journeymen, and both Cass and Denny were part of the Mugwumps, a folk rock band formed back in the early 1960s. The Mamas and the Papas was a group formed and debuted in the latter half of the 60s. According to Denny, John was hesitant to change genres, but during an acid trip in 1965 and some Beatles music, John agreed and the band was formed. In 1965, the group traveled across the country from New York all the way to Los Angeles to audition for Lou Adler and Dunhill Records, thanks to a mutual friend by the name of Barry McGuire, who knew both Cass and John before they formed the Mamas and the Papas. They were at the height of their career from 1965 to 1967. They garnered many high-ranking hits such as Go Where You Wanna Go, which peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Top 200. Their debut album, If You Can Believe Your Eyes and Ears, became a number 1 hit on the Billboard 200. Monday Monday, which won them a Grammy for Best Pop Performance by a duo or a group with vocals in 1967, and in 1966, their song I Saw Her Again peaked at number 4 on the Billboards. Behind the scenes, however, things were not as perfect as they seemed. All of the members were either cheating on their spouses with other band members or with other people out in the media, such as Michelle Phillips did with Denny and then later on with Gene Clark from the Byrds, or having secret relationships with each other, as I mentioned, or they were just lost in a haze of drugs and alcohol. They even had issues with appearing on stage inebriated, as they were not sober during some big performances, prompting the band to take a break and eventually break up entirely in 1968. A lot of this was due to the amount of drugs and alcohol used by members. John stated that he had been lost in a haze of drugs in the 70s, as he was using heroin, cocaine, painkillers, and alcohol. Denny stated that from the 1970s to the 1980s, he was lost in alcoholism, and both Michelle and Cass were rumored to do some drugs, but not as many as the other two Papas did during this time. It is to note that Cass herself struggled with some eating disorder of some kind that may have led to her eventual death, but we'll get on to that in a minute. A widespread rumor at the time was that the reason that the Mamas and the Papas really did break up was due to John interrupting Cass while she was explaining to Mick Jagger why she was arrested in England in the first place. The reason for her arrest was due to an unpaid hotel fee, who her lover at the time, Harris Pickens Dawson, unknowingly or maybe knowingly did not pay the hotel fee, and then was arrested as they were trying to get more information out of Dawson, who was rumored to be an international drug dealer. While Dunhill did let them out of their contract, it was still expected that the Mamas and the Papas would make their last album. This last album became People Like Us, which did not do well at all. And the studio managed to make some of their own money back by producing the albums The Best of the Mamas and the Papas, Farewell to the First Golden Era in 1967, The Golden Era Volume 2 in 1968, and 16 of their greatest hits in 1969, along with the Monterey Live album in 1970, all of which did fairly well commercially. The Mamas and the Papas were eventually inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1988, Vocal Group Hall of Fame in 2000, and the Hit Parade Hall of Fame in 2009. In the aftermath of the split, many of the members went on to have successful solo careers and acting careers. Cass Elliot was the most successful of the four in her solo career, but passed away while on tour in London on July 29, 1974, of a heart failure. It was rumored that her eating disorder, where she would not eat for periods of time, led to her early death. John Phillips had a moderately successful solo career in which he did some country-inspired albums and movie soundtracks. He had been arrested in 1980 over past drug charges from all his heroin use in the 1970s. John passed on March 18th in 2001 in Los Angeles of heart failure. Denny went on to make a solo album, but it did not really garner any commercial success and became a playwright in his hometown of Nova Scotia. Denny died on January 19th in 2007 due to complications with his kidney for an abdominal aortic aneurysm, and it is believed that these issues were caused by the amount of alcohol he consumed from the early 1970s to the end of the 1980s. Michelle went on to make only one solo album, which had little to no impact, but did have a prosperous career in acting. She was featured on projects such as Beverly Hills 90210, Let It Right, and Joshua Tree. She is the only original member of the band that is still alive and resides in Long Beach, California to this day. All members, except for Michelle and Cass, went on to perform on the new Mamas and Papas. They were replaced by Mackenzie Phillips and Elaine McFarlane when the band was formed. The new Mamas and Papas toured and performed from about 1981 to 1983, took a break, and then began performing again from 1985 to the late 90s. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, so they were kind of a big deal, but I'm not here for the story of the Mamas and the Papas. I'm here for the relationships and the aforementioned 10-year-long incestuous relationship between father and daughter. Now hold on, let me explain who Mackenzie is and what she did prior to her relationship before I start getting in on the craziness that was her relationship with her father. Mackenzie Phillips is the daughter of John Phillips and his first wife. She was born on November 10th in 1959, and by the age of 12 she was following in her father's footsteps. She formed her own band and started acting in films such as American Graffiti, which was her first big break. By the time that Mackenzie was 15, she was on the hit show One Day at a Time as Julie Mora Cooper Horvath, and was on the surface a very successful and happy young woman. However, behind the scenes she was anything but. Mackenzie claims that she did cocaine with her father back when she was only 11, but I couldn't really find anything on whether she did drugs or continued to use drugs in between her age of 11 to about 15, but I assume she was continually using drugs. However, in 1977, her drug issues came to a head when she was arrested for disorderly conduct, had 2 near-fatal overdoses, and was sent to rehab and fired from her hit TV show. She rejoined the cast later that year once out of rehab, but was fired once again when she relapsed and collapsed on set. Eventually, when the new Mamas and Papas were formed in 1981, she replaced her stepmother, Michelle, and performed with her father and went on tour. Eventually, due to drug issues, pregnancy, and other personal issues, she was replaced by Lori B.B. Lewis. Now that we have some context as to who the Mamas and the Papas were and who Mackenzie is, let's get into the shocking controversy that started this whole video. In Mackenzie's memoir, which came out in 2009, titled High on Arrival, she states that she had been in a 10-year-long romantic and sexual relationship with her father. To say this shocked the world is an understatement. This is the description of her memoir on Amazon. Mackenzie Phillips shares a raw glimpse into her lifelong battle with personal demons and near-fatal addictions, and reveals the shattering truth behind her complex, secretive, and damaging history with her father, the legendary John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas. Not long before her 50th birthday, Mackenzie Phillips made headlines with her arrest for drug possession at LAX, or the Los Angeles International Airport. The actor-musician mother had been on her way to a reunion of One Day at a Time, the hugely popular 70s sitcom on which she once starred as the lovable rebel Julie Copper. Born into rock and roll royalty, flying in Learjets to the Virgin Islands at 5, making pot brownies with Donovan at 11, Mackenzie grew up in an all-access kingdom of hippie freedom and heroin cool. As a rising Hollywood star herself, she joined the non-stop party in a hedonistic pleasure dome of her father's making, and a rap TV audience watched as Julie Cooper wasted away before their eyes. By the time Mackenzie discovered how deep and dark her father's trip was going, it was too late. As an adult, she has paid dearly for a lifetime of excess, working tirelessly to reconcile her wonderful, terrible past and pull of her magnetic father. By sharing her journey toward redemption and peace, the star who turned up high on arrival has finally come back down to earth to stay. In this book, she really does state that her relationship with her dad began on the night before her marriage to her first husband, Johnny Say. Before both herself and her father were on a cocktail of drugs, and Mackenzie recalls this night as such when speaking to Oprah in 2010.
Shocking is appropriate here. So let's get to the secret that you have been keeping from the public all of these years. It's on page 108. Would you read it?
Yeah. Hang on. Wow. Okay. I woke up that night from a blackout to find myself having sex with my own father. I don't remember how it started, or thankfully how it ended. Was it the first time? Had this happened before? I didn't know, and I still don't. All I can say is that it was the first time I was aware of it. For a moment, I was in my body, in that horrible truth, and then I slid back into a blackout. Your father is supposed to protect you. Your father is supposed to protect you, not you.
So that's what I found pretty shocking, and as you all did too, pretty shocking. And that was not the first time.
I don't know. I honestly don't know, but it was sort of merciful that the moment that I came out of that blackout and looked around and realized where I was and what was happening, that I slid right back into it and awakened the next morning in my own hotel room and not with him.
Mm-hmm. So what happens the next morning after you realize that you've had sex with your father?
If you're me?
Yeah, if you're you.
I boxed it away. I started very early on in my life compartmentalizing, boxing away difficult memories, difficult experiences that I'd had. And this was the mother of all difficult experiences. And
how old were you at this particular time?
I was 17, 18, a little over 18. I mean, I wasn't a small child. Mm-hmm. But I tell you something, I mean, it was one of those things where don't look, don't look. You know, you tell yourself there's a video loop in your head of this event, this occurrence, this moment in time. And I have spent the last 31 years trying not to look at it.
Okay, so you don't know if that was the first time.
I do not.
You do know that that was not the only time. Because, yes, because...
Well, because over time, we're talking at 17, 18, then we're fast forward, I'm on the road with my dad and the new Mamas and Papas, and it's 1981, maybe. And we're touring, and I begin waking up after drug-fueled events, with my pants around my ankles. And my father sleeping beside me. And again, don't think, don't look, just keep going. And this happened over time. It didn't happen every day. It didn't happen every week. But it certainly happened, and it happened enough times.
Many times.
Many times.
Many times.
That at the age of 19, on the night before my first wedding in 1979, I woke up that night from a blackout to find myself having sex with my own father. And then when I confronted my father a few months later, asking why he had raped her. Her father simply replied, "Raped you? Don't you mean we made love?" She also stated that while on tour with the new Mamas and the Papas, she and her father would do a cocktail of drugs and she would wake up with pants around her ankles and her father sleep in the same bed with her. Mackenzie wasn't sure if the night before her wedding was the first time she and her father ever had sexual relations, as her life was consumed by drugs by then, but so many times she just woke up in bed with him that she does not deny the possibility of that night not being the first night. The use of all these drugs affected the band. Mackenzie eventually ended the relationship with her dad, and she really only did it because she did not know whether her child was conceived by her father or her husband. Her own father even wanted to run away from America and go somewhere else, a country where they would not be judged for the relationship, but nonetheless she ended her relationship with him permanently. From then on, she went to have a no-contact basis with her father right until his death, where she forgave him for his actions. When Mackenzie did speak on this publicly, some family claimed that she was a liar, and some family did believe her. Her sister China did not know whether if this did or did not happen, but believed the story based on her own lived experiences with John. While Michelle and Genevieve, both ex-wives of John, were highly skeptical. Michelle even stated Mackenzie had a lot of mental issues, and that she had a needle stuck up her arm for 35 years. Mackenzie is jealous of her siblings, who have accomplished a lot and did not become drug addicts. The main issue here being that since John passed away, back in 2001, there is no conceivable way for him to either confirm or deny these accusations. My conclusion? I think that Mackenzie isn't lying or making things up. Drug addiction is a disease, and when you are on drugs and suffering with this disease, it can cause you to do things you would not do when you're sober. And to see her still try and continue to support her sobriety and sobriety of others is heartwarming. While I worked in residential treatment centers myself, I heard many horror stories about what some parents, and in particular fathers, were willing to do to their daughters, including but not limited to sexual assault, commercial sexual exploitation, to name a horrific few. Knowing this, I do really believe that Mackenzie is being honest when speaking on this decade of her life and what her father and her father's disease caused to happen. With that being said, if you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, please do not hesitate to ask for help. Addiction is a disease and you deserve the help to get and stay sober. I am attaching these resources for anyone that may need them in the United States. SAMHSA's National Helpline, 1-800-662-HELP, also known as the Treatment Referral Routing Service, is a confidential, free 24-hour-a-day, 365-day-a-year information service in English and Spanish for individuals and family members facing mental and or substance abuse disorders. This service provides referrals to local treatment facilities, support groups, and community-based organizations. Also visit the online treatment locator or send your zip code via text message 435748 or Help for You to find help near you. Read more about the Help for You text messaging service on their website. If you're still here, I want to thank you for sticking around for this video. This topic is one of the topics that is heavy to talk about, understandably, and I think it's one of those things where if we don't keep talking about what some people are willing to do, it'll just keep repeating itself. With that being said, if you liked the video, please hit that like button. If you want to see more of this content, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new video. And I'll see you guys next time.